13 years. Stop for a second and think about it. It's not 13 days of anger nor 13 months of resentment held back. It's 13 years. And what if I told you that you're not just going through a rough patch? You're finishing paying off a debt you didn't even know you'd signed. There's a comfortable belief about Scorpio that they're intense because they want to be, because they choose drama, depth, mystery. That's the version people tell themselves so they don't have to understand what's going on inside. The truth is more uncomfortable. Scorpio doesn't choose to carry certain burdens. They're born with an invisible contract, a cycle that closes on its own, almost always around the age of 13, the time it takes Saturn to traverse half of its symbolic path, collecting, testing, demanding proof that the lesson has been learned. You've felt this before. That feeling of being trapped in a repeating pattern, a different person, a different city, but the same wound opening in almost the same shape, almost at the same time of year. You called it bad luck. But what if it were an internal clock, slowly turning, deciding when you'd be ready to let go of what was never truly yours, only borrowed, so you could learn to return it? There's a part of Scorpio that knows this before any words can explain it. That's why they're suspicious of overly easy, happy endings. They test, observe, wait before believing that something good is here to stay. It's not unfounded distrust. It's a memory stored in the body, even when the mind has already forgotten the details. What if the last 13 years weren't a series of misfortunes, but installments of a single karma, paid one at a time until the day the account closes? What would you do differently, knowing that the next chapter no longer asks for payment? It only asks that you acknowledge what has already been resolved. Imagine someone who, without realizing it, carries the same kind of disappointment repeated for years. A friend who disappears out of nowhere, a love that retreats, an opportunity that crumbles at the last minute, always leaving the same bitter taste in the end. People call this bad luck. Scorpio, if you're honest, you know there's something more orchestrated behind it. There is a simple, yet unsettling explanation for this. Every deep emotional cycle has a length, and for Scorpio, this length tends to align, almost mathematically, with the major transits that cross their chart throughout life. It's not empty superstition, it's repeated observation, generation after generation, that certain numbers appear too often to be a coincidence. 13 is one of those numbers. What if what you are experiencing now is the final chapter of something that began more than a decade ago, without warning, but with its terms being fulfilled nonetheless? There's a difference between suffering a pattern and recognizing it. While you suffer without recognizing it, the pattern takes over. The instant you recognize it, even if it still hurts, something shifts inside your chest, like a weight stuck to the bone that finally begins to loosen, slowly but irreversibly. Perhaps that's why certain old memories have resurfaced for no apparent reason. It's not by chance. It's closure asking for passage. And there's a question few people ask because it hurts to ask. If this cycle is nearing its end, what will you do with the energy it consumed? 13 years of vigilance occupy an enormous space within a person. When that space empties, it begs to be filled. And it is precisely at this point that most people freeze without knowing how to recognize what. It was while searching for answers to these questions that I found this digital book. The divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose didn't come to me as a manual of ready-made rules, but as a mirror reflecting back questions I had been avoiding. For those who bear the mark of Scorpio, it serves as an invitation to do what this sign already knows how to do better than any other, to descend beyond the surface, to face what hurts, and to emerge on the other side more whole. It's not about believing in magic formulas. It's about developing the courage to dive deep, to not settle for easy answers. If you've made it this far, it's because something in this account has touched a place you recognize, but perhaps one you haven't yet named. Maybe you're mentally reliving the last few years, counting dates, searching for the pattern I just described. This discomfort you feel now is no accident. It's the first sign that the reckoning is about to close. And what you do with this moment can change the entire next cycle. Don't let this recognition cool down. You already possess the genius, you just need to unlock it. Access is in the first comment, but the last few units are disappearing. Click now and start this transformation. And tell me in the comments below, can you identify the exact year when a pattern in your life began to repeat itself? The first thing that needs to crumble is the idea that Scorpio is dark by nature. They weren't born dark. They were born with such a sensitive radar that they learned very early on to close doors before anyone could hurt them first. Think of a safe that locks itself as soon as you feel a vibration near the lock, not because you distrust everything, but because once, long ago, someone tried to open it without permission. That's the first mechanism, preemptive protection. And it's precisely this mechanism that builds the first years of a 13-year cycle. The years in which the armor forms silently, almost without the person realizing they are closing in. Notice how this happens in such small details that no one notices from the outside. A child who learns to smile a little before feeling the urge to smile, just to test if that adult will stick around. A teenager who learns to keep their opinion to themselves until they are sure that no one will use it against them later. Each of these small decisions seems isolated, but together they form the first layer of the armor, a layer so thin at the beginning that even Scorpio themselves doesn't notice it's already there, shaping every future choice, every relationship, every silence, kept for no apparent reason. Then comes the phase where this armor begins to weigh more than it protects. It's like wearing armor all the time, even indoors, even alone. Your shoulders ache, but taking it off seems more dangerous than continuing to carry it. Scorpio enters this intermediate phase of the cycle, carrying relationships, silences, decisions that seemed right at the time, but which were actually just the armor choosing for them. And here lies an uncomfortable question. How many of your choices in recent years were truly your own, and how many were just the armor trying to survive? It is at this stage that relationships appear that seem intense on the outside, but upon closer inspection are merely two armors testing each other, clashing to see which one gives way first. It is the job that is accepted, not because it is fulfilling, but because it seems secure enough not to expose any fragility. It is the friendship that is maintained at the right distance, neither too close to hurt nor too far to seem like loneliness. Each of these choices, viewed in isolation, seems prudent. Viewed together over the years, they paint the exact picture of a person living behind glass, observing their own life unfold without allowing themselves to fully feel its impact. But there's a point, almost always between the 6th and 8th year of the cycle, where the armor cracks, not because someone attacked it harder, but because it no longer fits who the person is becoming. It's the same process as a snake shedding its skin. Painful, uncomfortable, and completely necessary because the old skin no longer keeps up with the new body inside. This is the rawest moment of the 13-year cycle, when Scorpio realizes that protecting themselves in the old way no longer works, and that continuing to try only prolongs the pain instead of ending it. It is here that the question no one wants to ask finally appears. What if what I fear losing most is exactly what you need to die first? Typically, this split comes disguised as a crisis, a dismissal that seemed catastrophic, a breakup that felt like the end of the world, a forced move to a new city due to circumstances no one would choose. Only later, looking back, is it possible to see that the event didn't destroy anything worth keeping. It merely accelerated a shedding of skin that had been overdue for years. It's common at this point to feel a strange mix of grief and relief at the same time, as if two contradictory emotions had to coexist without one cancelling out the other. You just recognized the exact moment when the armor began to crack inside you. And perhaps you're wondering, now what do I do with this skin that no longer serves me? It was precisely this question that led me to the divine path that guides your zodiac sign towards a life of purpose. It doesn't promise to take away the pain of transformation. It promises companionship, to navigate it without getting lost along the way, something every Scorpio understands to be more valuable than any easy shortcut. The last copies are running out, and this type of material doesn't usually stay available for long. You already possess the genius, you just need to unlock it. Access is in the first comment, but the last few units are disappearing. Click now and start this transformation. After the crack comes the silence. Not empty silence, but the dense silence of someone who is internally reorganizing without yet knowing the outcome. It's the interval between the old skin falling away and the new one not yet being firm enough to be shown. Many people confuse this phase with weakness. It's not. It's structural reconstruction. The kind that doesn't show on the outside, but that decides whether the next chapter will be solid or will crumble again in a short time. Imagine a house that has undergone extensive renovations. From the outside, for months, it seems abandoned, boarded up, unpainted, with no sign of life. But it is precisely there, behind the boards, that the foundation is being rebuilt, the pipes replaced, the structure reinforced to withstand the weight of the coming years. Scorpio, at this stage of the cycle, tends to seem quieter, more absent, almost invisible to those observing from the outside. This is not weakening. It is the kind of silence that only exists when something essential is being rebuilt internally, far from eyes that would not recognize its value. Rejected invitations, messages that take longer to be answered, a sudden desire to spend more time alone. All this, at this stage, is not a sign of distancing oneself from people, but of approaching oneself, a necessary movement before any reconstruction can truly be sustained. And it is precisely in this silence that the most uncomfortable paradox of all appears. The person who most fears repeating the pattern is, without realizing it, the one who most feeds it, because they continue to choose the same types of relationships, the same types of silence, expecting a different result from an equation whose formula has never changed. This is not a character flaw. It is misdirected loyalty to an old version of oneself, a version that once needed that protection to survive, but which today is only preventing the next step. The heavy question that lingers is, are you protecting who you are now? Or are you still protecting who you were 13 years ago? This type of invisible loyalty often disguises itself as common sense. I prefer it this way, it's safer. I've been hurt this way before, I won't repeat it. Phrases that seem like wisdom, but which, upon closer inspection, are merely the old protection system repeating the same script year after year, with different actors in the same role. The paradox is cruel precisely because of this. The more a person fears repeating the pain, the more they unintentionally recreate the exact conditions for the pain to happen again, because their attention is focused on the fear and not on the real choice being made. If you've found yourself choosing once again the same kind of silence, the same kind of bond that hurt before, know that recognizing this now is rare. Most people never reach this level of clarity. It was to avoid letting this recognition slip away that I turned to the divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose. It helps transform that old loyalty to a past version of yourself into a new loyalty, directed toward who you are becoming. This kind of shift doesn't wait for perfect conditions, and access to this content won't wait forever either. You already possess the genius. You just need to unlock it. Access is in the first comment, but the last few units are disappearing. Click now and start this transformation. Recognizing this paradox is, in itself, half the journey. because from the moment you see the pattern clearly, it loses some of the power it had over you. It's like turning on the light in a room where you swore you saw a menacing shadow. The shadow is still there, but now you know exactly what it's made of, and the automatic fear begins to lose its power. Scorpio, when it understands this, stops running from its own intensity and begins to use it as a tool, not as a prison. This change is rarely announced with grand gestures. It appears in small details: the ability to listen to criticism without feeling like the world is collapsing, the courage to say what you feel before silence turns into accumulated resentment, the willingness to stay in a difficult relationship simply because it's worthwhile and not because leaving would seem like weakness. These are discrete adjustments, almost invisible to an outsider, but which, internally, represent a complete reorganization of how personal power is being used, no longer as a shield, but as a compass. And that's where the true end of karma lies. It's not the day when everything becomes perfect, without conflict, without shadows. It's the day you stop repeating the automatic response and choose, even with fear, a new response. 13 years of karma don't end with an external miracle. They end with a small decision, almost invisible to others, but seismic inside, the decision to trust again, to stay again, to open up again, even knowing that this time it might hurt too. It is at that exact moment that the internal clock, the same one that has been collecting installments for 13 years, finally stops ticking. No one sees this decision from the outside. There are no applause, no public celebration, not even a visible milestone on the calendar. It's a silent choice, often made alone in a room, in the early hours of the morning, in an internal conversation that is never spoken aloud. But the body knows. There is a physical relief, almost palpable, when the last installment is paid, as if the shoulders, tired of supporting an invisible weight for so long, could finally lower a few centimeters without anyone having touched them. That small seismic decision I mentioned, to trust again, even with fear, doesn't usually happen on its own. It needs a push, a structure to support courage on the day it falters. That's what I found in the divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose. Real support for those who have decided to stop repeating karma and start writing something new. Scorpio knows how to recognize when something is genuine, and this material won't be available indefinitely for those who are still deciding. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. And what comes after that is not an absence of intensity, it's intensity with purpose. Scorpio never stops feeling deeply. It simply learns to choose where to dive in and why. The cycle that closes doesn't erase the previous 13 years. It transforms them into a foundation. Each shell, each crack, each reconstructive silence becomes part of the depth that from now on ceases to be a burden and becomes a strength. It's like a metal that has undergone successive tempering processes. Each time it was heated and cooled, it became more resistant, more capable of withstanding pressure without breaking. No one would consciously choose to go through this process if they could avoid it, but the result, when it arrives, has a quality that no shortcut could produce. A Scorpio who goes through this closing of a cycle carries from then on a different serenity, not because they stopped feeling deeply, but because they learned in practice that they can get through anything and remain standing on the other side. Perhaps you've arrived at this point unintentionally counting your own years, searching for the crack, the silence, the small decision that still needs to be made. There's no rush in this. Scorpio has never been the sign of haste. It's the sign of depth, of the right time that reveals itself from within, not from without. The karma of 13 years is not a punishment. It's a silent school, which only those who have the courage to descend to the bottom can truly complete. Perhaps no one else will notice the difference in you in the coming days. Life will seem, on the outside, exactly the same. The same streets, the same faces, the same responsibilities waiting at your door. But inside, something is no longer the same. There is a new lightness occupying the space where constant vigilance once lived, a weariness you didn't even know you carried until you felt it begin to dissolve. This is the silent nature of Scorpio's great transformations. They rarely make a sound at the moment they happen, but they completely change the inner landscape of those who go through them. And if you're feeling this lighter weight now, even if only a little,